In 61 AD, the island of Britannia was a wild and rugged land, home to fierce Celtic tribes who had lived freely for centuries before the iron grip of the Roman Empire extended over their lands. Rome, one of the most powerful empires the world had ever known, had conquered vast territories across Europe, Asia, and Africa with its legendary legions and strategic brilliance. Among the tribes brought under Roman rule were the Iceni, a proud and warlike people occupying what is now eastern England. Their Queen Boudica was a woman known for her extraordinary courage, intelligence, and leadership, qualities that would soon ignite a revolt that shook Roman Britain to its core and echoed through history. The story begins with Boudica's husband, King Prasutagus, who ruled the Iceni with a careful balance of diplomacy and strength. To protect his kingdom from Roman greed after his death, he named the Roman Emperor Nero as co-heir alongside his own daughters. This political gambit was meant to preserve his family's rights and his people's autonomy. But when Prasutagus died, the Romans ignored his will, seizing Iceni lands, stripping the nobility of their wealth and power, and publicly humiliating Boudica by flogging her, an act designed to crush her spirit. Worse still, her daughters were subjected to unspeakable abuse. This cruelty enraged Boudica and her people, turning simmering resentment into a blazing fire of rebellion. Boudica's rise and the outbreak of rebellion. Boudica became the living embodiment of resistance. She rallied not only the Iceni, but also neighboring tribes, including the Trinovantes, who had suffered long under Roman oppression. Together, tens of thousands of warriors united behind her banner, bound by a fierce desire for justice, freedom, and revenge. This alliance was more than a military uprising. It was a cultural struggle, a fight to protect their identity, traditions, and sovereignty from the Roman yoke. Their first target was Camulodunum, the Roman provincial capital and a glaring symbol of imperial power. This city, recently colonized by Roman veterans and settlers, was a center of Roman administration and culture. But its defenses were weak and its citizens complacent. Boudica's forces stormed Camulodunum, sacking temples and villas, slaughtering settlers, and razing the city to the ground. This brutal destruction was a clear declaration. The Britons would no longer tolerate foreign domination. Emboldened by their resounding victory at Camulodunum, Boudica and her united rebel forces turned their fierce attention toward Londinium, an emerging Roman settlement strategically located on the banks of the River Thames. Though Londinium was still in its infancy as a Roman city, it was rapidly developing into a vital commercial and administrative center in Britannia. It represented not just a military target, but a symbol of Rome's expanding influence and ambition in Britain. However, Londinium's defenses were woefully inadequate for the storm that was about to descend upon it. The city lacked strong fortifications, and its population, composed mostly of Roman citizens, traders, and Romanized Britons, was unprepared for the scale and ferocity of Boudica's wrath. Many of the inhabitants believed Roman power to be invincible, and few anticipated that such a large-scale rebellion could threaten the heart of Roman authority in the province. As Boudica's formidable army approached, panic and chaos gripped the city. The rebels, motivated by rage and a deep sense of justice, descended upon Londinium with overwhelming force. They unleashed a campaign of destruction unlike anything the city had ever experienced. Buildings that symbolized Roman civilization, homes, markets, temples, and government offices, were mercilessly set ablaze. The flames quickly consumed the wooden structures, their smoke billowing high into the sky, turning day into night and casting an ominous shadow over the surrounding lands. The destruction was both tactical and symbolic. By razing Londinium, Boudica's forces sent a clear message that Roman oppression would no longer be tolerated, and that the foundations of Roman power in Britain were vulnerable. The rebels sought to erase the physical and psychological marks of Roman occupation, dismantling the symbols of empire piece by piece. The streets of Londinium ran red with blood as many residents, Roman soldiers, officials, traders, and civilians, were slaughtered in the chaos. The rebellion was merciless, fueled by years of oppression and personal suffering at Roman hands. Boudica's fighters showed little mercy to those they saw as collaborators or oppressors. Accounts from ancient historians paint a grim picture of this siege. Desperate cries, the the clash of weapons, and the roar of fires consuming the city. The psychological impact of Londinium's fall was enormous. News of the destruction spread rapidly throughout Britannia, causing fear and uncertainty among Roman settlers and officials. For the empire, this was a catastrophic blow, not just in terms of lost resources and territory, but because it exposed a chink in the seemingly invincible armor of Roman dominion. The Flames of Londinium illuminated the harsh reality. The empire's grip on Britain was precarious, and its legions faced a determined and united opposition. For Boudica and her coalition, the sack of Londinium was a powerful demonstration of their resolve and capability. It marked the height of their uprising, a moment when the seemingly unstoppable force of native resistance had brought Rome to its knees in Britain. But it was also a moment of reckoning, as the Roman governor Gaius Suetonius Paulinus gathered his remaining forces to confront the rebels and decide the fate of the province. Roman response, the battle plan. At this critical moment, the Roman governor Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, who was campaigning on the island of Anglesey in northwest Britain, hurried south with his legions to confront the rebellion. Despite being outnumbered and stretched thin, Paulinus was a seasoned commander who understood the stakes. He chose to make a stand at Watling Street, a narrow Roman road flanked by dense woodland and steep banks, a location that would neutralize the overwhelming numbers of Boudica's forces. The battle that followed was fierce and bloody. Boudica's warriors charged with desperate bravery, wielding swords, spears, and axes, driven by a powerful desire to break the Roman yoke once and for all. But the Romans, clad in heavy armor and armed with disciplined formations, held their ground. Using their famous testudo formation, the legionaries advanced steadily, throwing javelins to disrupt the charge and engaging in brutal close combat with their short swords, the gladi. Despite their valor, the rebels' lack of cohesion and training proved fatal. The Romans' superior weaponry, discipline, and tactics inflicted devastating losses. The rebel forces were eventually routed, with thousands slain and survivors scattered. The battle ended the rebellion, but not the story of Boudica's courage and legacy. Historical accounts vary on Boudica's fate. Tacitus suggests she took her own life to avoid capture, while other sources imply she died shortly after from illness or wounds. Regardless, her legacy as a warrior queen who dared to stand against Rome has endured for centuries. Boudica's rebellion forced Rome to reconsider its approach to governing Britain. Harsh measures followed to reassert control, but her uprising exposed the limits of imperial power and the enduring spirit of the conquered peoples. Today, Boudica is remembered not just as a rebel leader, but as an enduring symbol of resistance, female strength, and the fight for justice. Her story has inspired countless generations, reminding us that the desire for freedom and dignity can never be fully suppressed, even by the mightiest empires. The story of Boudica stands as one of the most compelling testaments to the indomitable spirit of humanity, a spirit that refuses to be broken or silenced in the face of overwhelming oppression. Her rebellion was far more than just a military confrontation. It was a profound and passionate cry for justice, dignity, and the preservation of identity. It was the fight for the very soul of a people who had been pushed to the brink yet refused to surrender. Though Boudica and her forces were ultimately defeated on the battlefield, her courage and leadership left an enduring legacy that transcended time. Her name has become a symbol of resistance against tyranny, inspiring countless generations across the centuries to stand firm and fight for their freedom, no matter how impossible the odds may seem. Boudica's story reminds us that true courage is not measured by victory alone, but by the willingness to rise and resist in the face of injustice. It teaches us that even the mightiest empires, no matter how powerful or ruthless, can be shaken and challenged by the unyielding bravery of those who dare to dream of liberty.